My name is Lustig. I come from a small town in Romania by the name of Strâmtura in Maramureș. My father was the Rov in town. He also had a yeshiva of 150 boys. We were in Strâmtura. Everything was okay until 1940. In 1940, Hungary reoccupied the town from Romania, and it became Hungary. Right away, we couldn't go to school anymore. No Jewish stores would be able to open. Already they started to persecute us. In beginning of 1944 is when the Gestapo came and reoccupied us. So that's when we were already under the German occupation. We were still at home till Pesach. Before Pesach, about a week before Pesach, they arrested my father and the shoichet from the town. We didn't know why. You have to understand, we had no radio, we had no newspaper, we didn't know what was happening really in the world. They were taken away, we didn't know where they were. We had to make Pesach without my father. My grandmother, my mother's mother, lived with us also. I come from a family of 7 siblings. I was the oldest. The youngest was 2 weeks old. Pesach we made without my father. It wasn't easy, but it had to be done. The last day of Pesach, the Germans took bullhorns and they announced all the Jews, women, children, men, women, and children had to gather in front of the shul. We had no idea why do they want us to go in front of the shul. And they told us each person can take a small little package. Of course, we couldn't take no food. It was the last day of Pesach. We had no food in the house. We went in front by the shul. When we got there, we realized that they are going to take us away because the whole street was parked with horse and buggy. We had no bus, we had no cars in the town. Everything was horse and buggy. We figured right away they're going to take us away. They started loading us on those horse and buggies, and they started taking us out of town. As we passed the church, all the goyim who had any musical instrument stayed in front of the church and started playing. They were so happy to see us go. Even so, their whole livelihood was from the Jews. But the anti-Semitism, most of them were Catholics, was so great that they were happy to see us go. They took us 3 towns away to the town of Dragomărești, and that's where we were taken to the ghetto. Part of that town was roped off, and every family got 1 room in a house. Imagine, it was my grandmother, my mother, we were 7 siblings. My father wasn't there yet. He was still away. We didn't know where he was. But we had 1 room. Every room was occupied by a different family. It was very little food, and we had very little money. But there were people in the community, like there are always Jews who help each other, and they opened up places where we could go get a little food. A few days after Pesach, my father came back. He still had his beard. My father was a very Hasidic Yid. He was a Vishnitzer Chussid. He still had his beard, his payas. He was still dressed in his levush. The next day, the Gestapo came and they told him to come to the porch of the house, and they cut his beard and payas. I think that was the worst thing they could have done to him, because after that, he wouldn't go out of the house without taking a kerchief and tying on his face. He felt so naked without his beard and payas that he covered his face with a kerchief. We were in the ghetto till a week before Shavuos. A week before Shavuos, again, the announcement, we had to gather in front. There was no shul, but in front of, they told us where we had to gather. Everybody had to gather there. Again, we didn't know where we are going to be taken. Again, there was horse and buggy. But not everybody had room, because now it wasn't just one town. There were a lot of towns there. The rest of the people had to walk. And they walked us to the town where there was a railroad tracks, and that's where they had the cattle cars prepared for us. They made us board those cattle cars. The cattle cars, when we boarded them, too many people in each cart. If you stood, you couldn't sit down. If you were sitting, you couldn't stand up. There was no room. We were like sardines. When we, from the cattle cars, they had, each cattle car had a tiny little window, and they locked us into those cattle cars. We were in the cattle cars. The cattle cars were, after everybody was in there, the train started going. We didn't know where we were going. We started going through cities of Czechoslovakia, but we used to stop like by every station. People from those towns, the Jews that were not taken away, realized who in the cattle cars were. They used to come and bring us water and give us water and food through those little windows. It was very dangerous for them. If the Germans caught them, they killed them. But this is what Ayid does, tries to help somebody else. We were going, the cattle cars took us a few days. We reached Auschwitz in 7, Chof 7. We reached Auschwitz. When we got to Auschwitz, the cattle car stops. The Gestapo came and opened the doors, and they told us to jump out. As we were jumping out of the cars, the stench and the smoke was so overpowering, we didn't know what it was. There were a lot of Jewish men there, but they were there from before. Most of them were Polish, because they came already in 1939, 1940. We asked them, what's all that smoke? What's all that terrible smell? Some of them said, those who were nicer, kinder, said, you'll find out. But some of them said, they're burning your parents there. Don't worry. That's where you're going. As we lined up outside of the cattle cars, my mother had the baby in her hand. One of the men said to her, give your baby to your mother so you'll be able to remain alive. But she wouldn't part with her baby. They lined us up 5 in a row, and then Mengele came and made the selection. We didn't know where we're going from the selection. This one was going right, one was going left. My mother, her mother, and 5 of my siblings were going to the left side. I was put to the right side, and my father and my brother, who was a year younger than me, went to the right side. But we still didn't know where we were going. They took us to there were 2 large buildings there. We didn't know where they were. But the 2 large, one was the gas chamber, the other one was the crematorium. We didn't know what they were. Before we got there, they made us undress, take away all the clothes, they cut off our hair, and they said we're going for showers, which was true. Those who were on the right side went for showers, because the building had 2 sections. They had one section where the showers came water. There was one section the showers came gas. Those who were put to the left side went into the other side. We heard them screaming. We heard them scratching on the walls. They tried to get out, but they were locked in. We didn't know what was going on there. After the showers, they gave us clothing. What did we get? We got a pair of shoes, but not regular shoes. We got clogs like they were in the Dutch wear, you know, those wooden clogs, and one-piece dress like a nightgown. That was our whole clothing. They cut our hair, and then they made us line up for zeilapel again. Zeilapel is, they were counting us. You had to be 5 in a line. After the zeilapel, I saw my father and my brother. They were also lined up, but further. Then they took us away. And that's when we found out that those who were on the other side, by the gas chambers, they were all gassed. After they were gassed, there was a Sonderkommando. There were a lot of men who were chosen to be from the Sonderkommando. What was their job? They had to take the dead bodies from the gas chamber, put them in the crematorium. But they got a better life. They lived in better places, they got more food, so we thought they had it better. But in reality, no, because after a few weeks, they ended up in the gas chamber because the Germans didn't want that one of them should escape and go out to the world and tell what's happening. So they used to gas them, put them in the crematorium, and chose a new group of men to do the same thing. Now the Sonderkommando had to do a few things. They had to remove, in Europe, when you went, you needed new teeth. There were no, like here, white enamel. There it was gold. They had to remove the gold teeth from their mouth. If somebody had a gold watch or anything, they had to remove all their valuables. The Germans took everything away. And after that, they put them into the gas chambers. After the crematorium was, it was like an oven where they shoved them in, and after they were burned, they took the ashes and they buried it. Where? We don't know. It's one big cemetery there. We were taken to Birkenau. Auschwitz had several sections. Auschwitz was where the gas chamber and the crematorium was. Then you had lagers. You had the A lager, the B lager, and the C lager. C is like a C. In Europe, a C is a C. I was taken to the A lager. When we got to the A lager, the first thing they did is they gave us a number. I have a number on my hand, A7443. This number, how was it put, you'll ask me? It wasn't put in a humane way. They did not, what they had is an inkwell and a pen. And on the other side, they had fire. They heated the pen, put it in the ink, and if you look closely, you see the dots. And that's how they put the number. It was a very painful procedure. We had no choice. We had no say. It took quite a while because, again, like each number had a lot of pricks. And each prick was first put in the fire, and then in the well of ink, and then in the hand. We were moved into Lager A. The Lager A consisted of barracks. Each barrack had bunks. Each bunk has 3 layers, and in each bunk 6 people slept. There was no room for 6 people in that bunk, but we had no choice. That's what we had. If you lay down on one side, You couldn't turn to the other side because then everybody had to turn. It was very uncomfortable. The block had no water, had no bathroom, had nothing, just the bunks. Every block had a Stubälteste, who was a Jewish girl who was there from before. She was the one to make sure that we kept the place clean. There was nothing to keep it not clean. We didn't have anything. Every morning, the Germans took us to the bathroom. You couldn't go to the bathroom. It's only we went with the Germans. They took the whole block, and we went there, and they used to rush us. Schnell, schnell, schnell. That's all they used to yell. Then they brought us back, and we lined up Zählerpell. Excuse me. Every morning we lined up, and every evening Zählerpell. They used to count us to make sure that nobody escaped. There was no way of escaping. The whole camp was barbed wire, and they were electric barbed wire. If there were people who wanted to escape, and we saw them, they ran to the wire, and they were electrocuted on the spot. They gave us breakfast. What was the breakfast? Half a cup of coffee. Then we went to work. Then they transferred us. After the A-Lager, and the A-Lager we didn't go to work. After the A-Lager, we were transferred to the C-Lager. That's when we went to work. Every morning after breakfast, after we lined up for Zählerpell, where the Germans counted us, we walked to work. I worked in a Weberei. You know what a Weberei is? Where they do weaving. We used to weave. They gave us all kind of materials, and we had to weave it. I don't know what they did with it, but that's what they did. And the Germans used to stay at the end and watch us. And we had a quota. We had to make a certain amount of yardage every day. Now, by nature, some people are fast, some people are slow. If you didn't finish your quota, you were punished very badly. Most of them, not just hitting, but killing, shooting them. So what did we do? The people who were faster, we used to watch when the Germans looked aside, and we used to ask the other girls, let's change places. We finished already, now we'll finish for you, and you sit there. This is what he does. This is show you, under the worst of circumstances, you still try to help the other Jew. It was Mesiras Nefesh, because if the Germans saw you, you were gone. We worked in the Weberei, and at night we came back to the barracks, to the Zählerlager. What was our supper? Our supper was a half a cup of beet soup. Not red beets, but sugar beets. But we never saw any beets in it. It was mainly water and a tiny piece of bread. That was our whole food for the day. In the morning, the coffee, and in the evening, that. And we had to stay in the Zählerpell. Again, they had to count us, whether it was freezing cold or it was hot, it didn't matter. You had to stay outside, they should be counted. Every 4 weeks, Mengele came and made a selection. Used to line us up, and again, you go right, you go left. We used to watch, we shouldn't go to the right, we shouldn't go to the left, only to the right. I was very small at that point, I was short, I was skinny, and once he chose me to go to the left. We were in our birthday suits when we were chosen. I was together with 4 first cousins, so we stayed always 5 in the same line. So I took my dress and I covered my number because I figured I was trying to run to the other side. I was very courageous, not anymore, but then I was courageous. And I figured if they'll catch my number, and nothing I can do, they'll find me. But if they don't see my number, and if I have a chance to run across, maybe I'll be able to save my life. Came a chance where I ran across, but then was a problem. We were now 6 in the line, and you couldn't be 6 in the line. So we had to ask all the girls in the line, everybody should move back 1, so I can slip in the middle of the line again. And again, they did it with Mesiras Nefesh. They weren't supposed to move back. If somebody noticed them, for sure they would have been hit badly. But they did it. We were in Auschwitz like that. For Rosh Hashanah, we were there in Kippur. We knew. We didn't have no calendar. We didn't have no siddur. We had nothing. But across the fence, there was a men's lager, and they used to yell. I don't know how they knew. They used to yell across, it's Shabbos, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's Yom Kippur. Even so, we were so starved, we fasted most of the time. We fasted for Yom Kippur. We went to work. We didn't drink the coffee in the morning. We came back. We took the soup. We took the bread. But we saw it was too light. We couldn't eat yet. We took it with us into the barrack, and we waited till we were able to eat. We fasted Yom Kippur. We did whatever we were able to. Even so, it was big, big Mesiras Nefesh. We were in Auschwitz. I was in Auschwitz till almost the end of December. You have to remember, I went to work every day. We had no sweaters, we had no coats, we had no stockings. It was snow. Poland is very cold at that time of the year already. But the Bashefer wanted I should stay alive, and it was okay. Then, if you heard of the Death March, I was in the Death March. The Death March was when the Germans realized that the Russians are getting very close to Auschwitz. They decided they are not going to allow the Russians to liberate us. They are going to take us to Bergen-Belsen, to Germany. We walked from Poland in December to Germany till we reached Bergen-Belsen. Half the people never died on the way. It was a real hard walk. That's why they call it the Death March, because more than half the people died. I walked in the same row with 2 sisters. One of the sisters never fell down. The other sister wanted to at least stay and bury her. The Germans wouldn't let. She had to just keep walking. When we got to Bergen-Belsen, Bergen-Belsen was a different kind of a lager. They didn't have a gas chamber. They had a crematorium, but they had no gas chambers. But again, they took us to barracks the same way as in Auschwitz. But we had even less food than in Auschwitz. Not only that, in Auschwitz, they used to take us every 4 weeks, at least, where we could wash ourselves. In Bergen-Belsen, there was no place to go and wash yourself. But we had to go to work. Every morning, we only had in the morning a half a cup of coffee. Sometimes we had bread. Most of the time we had nothing in the evening. We went to work. We were digging ditches. Why they needed the ditches, I have no idea. I have no answer for that. But being that the sanitation was so bad, right away most of the people came down with typhoid fever. I don't know, you probably heard of it. Today, Baruch Hashem, I think it's eradicated. I don't think, maybe in the third world country someplace they still have. Imagine you're running high temperature and you have typhoid fever, you're hallucinating, you have no medication, you have no food. 3/4 of the people never died. The problem was that they didn't remove the dead. So when you had to go to work, we came down from the bunk, how do you go out? The dead were on the floor. You had to step all over them. We used to ask mechila from them, but it was a choice. Either they're going to kill you or you're going to go to work. With the temperature, with everything, you went to work. That was the first big thing in Bergen-Belsen, was the typhoid fever. The second, lice, body lice. Now body lice is, we didn't have hair, so we didn't have hair lice. We had body lice. But body lice, you can't use something. First of all, we had nothing to use. We had no water, we had no soap, we had nothing. You had to take off each louse with your hands. Now how do you do your back? We had to pair up with somebody. It was very, very traumatic experience because the itching was beyond belief. You had no food, you were itching, you had to go to work, and you had to step over never the dead bodies. Then they did a third riches to us. They took glass and they ground it up and they put it in the bread. Even so, they didn't give us bread very often, but when they gave it to us, it was laced with glass. So a lot of people never died from that too. Bergen-Belsen we were there Pesach in Bergen-Belsen. And we knew when was Pesach the same way because across across our camp were the men's camp, and they told us it's Pesach. Now the question was, should we eat or shouldn't we eat? What do you do? It's Pesach. We decided we're going to have the coffee, and if they'll give us some soup, we're going to have it, but we're not going to have the bread. Rish is what they did. Pink on Pesach, they did give bread. But not only we didn't eat it, we didn't even take it. We were hungry enough, but we did not eat the bread. It was torture, but I guess a Jewish neshama has a different feeling to different things. And we felt we can't eat the bread. We just can't swallow it. And we didn't even take it to put it away because we didn't want to keep the bread. In Bergen-Belsen, there were a lot of other problems. There were people there who didn't want to go to work. They were sick, so when the Germans came in the morning, they used to chase us. And we had no choice but to go. Because if you didn't want to go to work, they killed you. It was very hard. In other words, we went through almost a whole year without proper food. From Matzah Pesach till May of 45. From May of 44 to May of 45, we almost didn't have proper nourishment. We had very little nourishment, and a lot of ekmes nefesh, and a lot of selections, and a lot of way that you tried to escape whatever came your way that you felt wasn't right. Then the English came and they liberated us. But they made a mistake the first day when they liberated us, not on purpose. They didn't realize that we never ate for so many months. They gave us baked beans for the first time. And there was another thing that killed a lot of people. They realized it the next day. They gave us rice and chocolate and farina. They realized what they did. But we had no clothes. So there were German houses. They ran away, all the Germans. Again, we went in there and we took some clothing because we had nothing what to wear. It was right or wrong, I don't know. But we did it. What they say, nooit brecht hazen. That's exactly what we did. I was in Bergen-Belsen for a while. I met my brother there because he was in the other camp. And from there, I was transferred to Sweden. And I went in the school by Rabbi Jacobson in Lidingö.
Is there a day that goes by where you don't think about this?
No. In the beginning, it took me months and months. I used to have nightmares at night. Many times my husband had to wake me up. He said, "No, you're not there, you're not there. Wake up, wake up, wake up." But then it diminishes. But it's always in your mind. But not only it's in your mind. Many times I think, how is it possible that I went through that? How did I do it? It's mind-boggling to realize that I went through it. But that's what Hashem wanted. I built, Baruch Hashem, a big family. I have children, grandchildren, a lot of great-grandchildren, Baruch Hashem, living all over the United States.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most sought-after Jewish speakers, teachers, and thinkers.